First Samuel chapter number 3, we see the account of the young boy Samuel. Samuel is now living with Eli at the house of God. Samuel is going to be called upon of God to do great things in the years ahead. And in First Samuel chapter number 3, we have that story we know so well from the Word of God. It's been told in Sunday school classes for generations. And that's the story of God coming to Samuel in the middle of the night with exactly what his will is, with what he was going to do, with the judgment that was ahead. Samuel, of course, the first time he hears the voice of God, runs to Eli. He thinks Eli has called him. Eli, after a couple rounds of this, realizes that the Lord is trying to speak to him. And so Eli tells Samuel, verse number 9 of 1 Samuel chapter 3, he tells Samuel to tell the Lord, "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth." And so Samuel does, and God reveals exactly what's ahead, what's at stake, judgment that's coming to the nation of Israel, to Eli's house, because of the sin that has gotten out of hand. And that Samuel is going to be the next guy to lead the nation of Israel in the spiritual and in a political realm for many years to come. But what's interesting is over in verse number 15. Verse number 15, it says, "And Samuel lay until the morning, and then opened the doors of the house of the Lord." Samuel, the next morning, after hearing all of this great news, all of these big events in the days ahead, Samuel got back to the job that he was supposed to do that day. After hearing all of this great news and all of this amazing stuff and all of this judgment that was going to come to Eli and plans that God had for him, and he heard the voice of God the night before, and he lay awake. The Bible tells us he lay awake until the morning, pondering all that he heard. And the next morning, the very first thing he did was he went about doing what he had always done every other morning. Opened the doors, got things ready, prepared the day's job at hand. We see that later in the life of young David. First Samuel, the book of First Samuel is going to progress very quickly. And by chapter 17, we have the story of David and Goliath. But before we get to the story of David and Goliath, we have the story of Samuel coming to anoint the next king of Israel. Saul had been rejected of God. And so Samuel makes his way per God's leading to Jesse's house. He checks all of the boys and finally asked if there's any more. Jesse says, "Yes, my youngest son. He's out with the sheep." Samuel beckons David to come in. David comes in. God says, "This is the one." Samuel anoints David as the next king of Israel. And then we see David in chapter 17 later on. We see him in chapter 17 as the battle with the Philistines is raging, as his older brothers are down for the fight. And there we find David out taking care of the sheep. His dad beckons him in from out on the fields once again. Isn't that interesting? You would think that here's the young man, his dad would say, "Oh, he's going to be the next king. Let's protect him. Let's take care of him. We're not going to let him out there in the wild. We're not going to make him take care of the sheep. He's going to be the next king. We should maybe pamper him or take care of him." No. David's job that day was just to take care of the sheep. The king, the palace, the royalty, that was later. When God would see fit, that was later. And we know from David's experience, it'll be much later. But today, his job is to take care of the sheep. So I think the lesson we learn here is in both Samuel and David's life is we need to get back to our duty after the good times. When things are going well, when things are going great, when we have great news, when everything's up, when things are exciting, don't neglect the duty that's at hand. Don't neglect the little things we're supposed to be doing. Don't neglect our responsibilities today. The flip side of that we see exampled by the disciples, the apostles, right after Jesus Christ had died. He was buried. He met with them in the upper room. And then there was some talk amongst the disciples, well, let's just go fishing. And they don't know what to do. Jesus isn't quite there to lead them around like he was. They're not following him like he was. Things are a little different now. Let's just go fishing. Jesus, of course, goes out into the lake, and if you remember, he's cooking the fish on the shore as they come back. Jesus goes and beckons them and finds them once again. And we know from there on out, we'll see, according to the book of Acts, that these apostles turn the world upside down. So they get back on track. But we need to get back to our duty, the things that we're supposed to be doing after the good times, but we need to do it after the bad times too. When things aren't so good, and when there's been tragedy, and when there's been problems. There's a Bible basis for a character that gets back to doing what we're supposed to be doing. The Bible word for this is faithfulness. Be faithful in what we're supposed to do. We know what the will of God is for our lives today. I think many people struggle trying to figure out what God's will is for them tomorrow or down the road or in the future. But by and large, we know exactly what God's will is for us right now today. Right now today, we have responsibility in our families and responsibilities at home. We have responsibilities to take care of sin in my life, responsibilities to grow in my relationship with God, responsibilities of things I've already committed to at my church, responsibilities of things I need to take care of today. And if I take care of my responsibilities today, we'll let God worry about where he wants me to be tomorrow. Let's get back to our duty, not neglect our duty in the good times or in the bad times, but to stay faithful all the time.